Today's program is definitely not child-friendly. Now, please don't be afraid that I'm going to say anything that's inappropriate for adults, and there's a lot that I'm going to leave out. But if you have small children in the room, I suggest you either ask them to leave or hit the DVR button and record this and watch it later. But what I want to do is give you an overview of Planned Parenthood. But before I do that, so that you understand where we're coming from, it's important to study the founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. Because Planned Parenthood, interestingly enough, really is made in her image. Now, my credentials to speak on Planned Parenthood are probably better than most people. I have been fighting against them for years. I lost my home in a court battle against Planned Parenthood and the National Organization of Women. They had a judge in their pocket in 1992 during the Republican convention. We did protests on the sidewalk, public sidewalk. I was put in jail, ultimately got sued and lost in state court. And they literally sued me into bankruptcy. So I have personal animus there. But before that all happened, I did a lot of research on Planned Parenthood and discovered that this was a very, very godless woman. So let's talk about her for a minute. She was born of Irish immigrant Catholic parents, was born and raised in the southern tier of New York in the Elmira area. And I used to live near there. So she got married in 1902 and wanted to basically have a life of leisure. And her husband was fairly well connected with some left-wing radicals at the time. And they had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. But part of their radicalism was sexual liberation, anything goes. And she started to sleep around with her husband's radical buddies. And after a while, her husband said, I don't really care for this. This isn't working for me. So he took her and the 3 children off to Europe. And after 2 weeks, she said, come on, let's go home. I don't want to be here. Let's go home. And he wouldn't do it. So she scraped enough of his money together to abandon him. And she and the 3 kids went back to New York. And she started distributing literature like The Woman Rebel and pamphlets on birth control. She was arrested once because the material was so lewd. In the material, they were promoting anything goes sex between anyone, married, unmarried, orgies. She turned out to be, in biblical terms, if you read Proverbs chapter 6, she became a whore, a literal whore. The neglect of her children was so severe that her daughter got pneumonia, was not cared for properly, and died. Okay? That's how bad she was as a mother and as a woman. But she was a siren. She was very good looking, and her speeches about sexual liberation were so titillating that it got her into the company of very important people like H.G. Wells, you've heard of him, Julian Huxley, people from the continent. She was arrested again and actually fled to Europe so she could avoid charges, and spent 6 months over there romping from bed to bed, and then finally came back, got the charges dismissed. Then she opened up a birth control clinic right in the middle of some Italians and some Slavs and some Jews, and that was shut down by the authorities, and my research showed that she went to jail for 30 days for that one. There's a lot more details that are very sordid. In fact, I'll tell you one more when we come back. It involves her second marriage. So the reason that this is important, we need a new president if we're going to defund Planned Parenthood. We're going to need the will of both houses of Congress to have a majority. But I want you to grasp how evil Planned Parenthood is by grasping how evil Margaret Sanger was, and what an absolutely debauched, godless woman she was. I'm going to take a break. We'll be right back with one more important detail about Margaret Sanger's life, and then we'll talk a little bit about Planned Parenthood.